Hi, in this episode, what we're going to do, we're going to analyze a digital marketing campaign where we look at the distribution of data and when the campaign actually reached a saturation point where it was no longer as effective as it was. And we will also dive into a tiny bit of probability, all in Excel. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. So let me take you through the presentation on our digital marketing campaign analysis. Here's a request that we have from our management. They want to know at what point did our marketing efforts reach saturation? Where are we over leveraged? What recommendations can we provide to them? And then what is the chance we have more than 8 conversions a day? And that's when probability comes in. Our deliverable, provide an insight report to the marketing team on your findings. The technology we're going to use is Excel and of course PowerPoint. And then the stats and the techniques, we're going to use the slope, pivot table, probability, and distribution. Let's dive into our data set and do a quick review of what we have. So we have our channels broken down here. We have social, referral, organic, paid. And then we have a date column. We have a users, new users, sessions, bounce rate, the pages per session, the average session duration, and the conversions. Obviously, the conversions is going to be our main focus for our success metric. So what we're going to do is start building out and answering the questions that we had from our management. So I've copied those questions over to a notepad. We have at what point did our marketing efforts reach saturation? Where are we over leveraged? What recommendations can you provide? And what is the chance we have 8 conversions per day? So I'm going to leave this one to the end. So I'm just going to reorganize this because we want to be able to review the data. And then I am going to take over leverage first. Because it's an easier one to do, because all we need to do is figure out are we over leveraged for conversions, and we can do that with a pivot table. So I am going to just quickly create a pivot table in a new sheet. So I'm going to click into any part of my data here. I'm going to go to insert, go to a pivot table from table and range. It should copy this range, and you can see that we have 1,119 rows, and we hit new, and then we're given a pivot table. I am going to rename that our pivot, and now what I want to do is I want to take those channels and bring them down into rows. And then I want to go over to our sessions. And now you can see that we have these summarized by session by bringing this down in the values. I want to click into that by just clicking into the down caret here. Go to value settings. I am going to click show as, and I want to make that a percentage. And so you can see we have a couple percentages present of the grand total, of the column total. These should give you the same because we just got that one column there. So I'm going to do grand total, hit OK. And you can see right off the bat, 90% of our sessions or our traffic is coming from search, which is huge. Now, we can quickly just create a pivot table from pivot chart, and I'm just going to click the pie, hit OK. And of course we can stylize that by just going in, adding our data labels. So I'll let you style that the way you want, but this is essentially telling us what we have. If I were you, I would probably link all of these labels to the data so it looks a little bit cleaner. So you can just format data labels, and then you can see here in the right pane, you can add what you need. All I want is the percentage. I don't want the value. And I want the, you can add the series name or the category name. If you add the category name, you can see what you have here. It's a little bit messy, but we'll leave that styling to the end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this pivot table, go to Control C, go down a few rows, hit Control V. Now sometimes this causes a little bit of issues. So before you remove sum of sessions, because sometimes it'll connect back to this visual, bring in your conversions, because that's the next metric we want to evaluate. Then pull out your sum of sessions. We click the down caret, go to value and field settings, go to show as value, and then percent of the grand total. We hit OK. Now we can go back up to insert, go to pivot chart, click pie, and now you have your pie chart with the conversions. And if we just add the data labels and we go over to more options, we can add that category label and the percentage, and we have what we want to here. I'm going to delete the legends, and then let's do a quick evaluation of what we have here. And you can see other is way up here. So we have two tables. So we can see for our traffic table, we have 91% of our traffic coming from organic search, and 27% of that is making up our total conversions. You can definitely name this so you don't get confused. Conversions, and I'm going to call this traffic. So I'm just making sure we know what we're looking at. So this is a lot of traffic. So I would say, yes, we are over leveraged for traffic. That could be for a number of reasons. Maybe there's a omni-channel interaction where users are using organic search as the last channel of conversion after we've been introduced by our marketing paid channel. So that's a possibility. But I would say it's still quite dangerous to have this much traffic coming from a single channel. So my recommendation is, well, we do need to go back to the marketing team and then dive into the analytics to see if there's some omni-channel interaction, and to get a better understanding on why we are having so much traffic, and dive into those types of keywords to see if those keywords are actually transactional or informational, because that would give us an indication of where the user is in their buying journey when they hit our site through organic. So let's see where we are in our notes. We want to know at what point did our marketing efforts reach saturation. So we can go back over to our full data here, and what I'm going to be concerned with marketing is the paid channel. So we probably need to filter only paid traffic. So if I click the data tab, we can add a filter. So I'm just going to press Control A to highlight everything. And then from the data tab, you can click filter. I'm going to go over to channel, and I'm going to select all, and just do paid, and click that. And you can see that the index is truncated, so it gives us an indication that the filtering is there. I'm going to Control A and then Control C. I'm going to click the plus button here and create a new sheet. I'm going to call this sheet paid, and then I am going to right click and then paste as values, so I can bring everything back from that paid channel. I'm going to go back over to my original and make sure I eliminate the filtering. So I'm just going to go back to select all, and you can control A and you can just remove that filter, which is easy. Now we're back to paid. So what I want to do here is create a running sum of both our conversion and our sessions so we can see the interaction between those two columns in terms of a relationship. So I'm going to create two new columns. I'm going to call this a session sum for the running sum there, and then I'm going to do a conversion sum. And now what I can do is I'm going to go down one column for our sum, but for this one I just want to copy over the original data there, which is the 20, and then I'm going to copy over the conversions for conversion sum because I want our running total to start on the second row. Now it's not necessary, but it definitely makes your visual look better. So I'm going to do sum, and then I'm going to go over to our sessions, and go to session, and I'm going to go back up to E2, and then I'm going to go one down, which is E3. But in the E2, I want to fix that. And the way we kind of make a cell fix, if we use F4, if you can't get F4 to work, you just put $2 over each value. I'm going to click enter. And let me spell sessions correct. Looks like we have a double E there. So now you see what happens is we are having, and if I click into those two, we are bringing both of those in. You will get this little error here, and what it says, it has a formula adjacent to a cell that doesn't have one, and we could just ignore error. But if I click it all the way down, you can see now we get that error again, but it doesn't matter. You know what it means. It's not going to hurt. And then we have a running total of our sessions. We can do the same with our conversions. I'm going to go back up to conversions. I'm going to go to the second cell, and then I am going to fix that cell and function, and then I am going to click this all the way down. And now we have a running total of our conversions. Now we can kind of model that relationship with the slope. So let me click that off so we get a full view. So what is the slope? So if I take these two values, our session sum and conversion sum, and I highlight the session sum first and then control click over to the conversion sum, and then I go to insert, and then I go to a scatter plot, you can see there is a relationship, a linear relationship between those two. So we are going to want to see what the linear relationship is, but not necessarily all of this. We want to see individual points. So I'm just going to show you the trend line. So I'm going to click the plus sign, go over to trend line, and then I'm going to click over here. And then you can see we have a linear trend. I'm going to go to more options. And then we linear by default. I want to display the equation. So essentially, this is y equals mx plus b. M is your slope. So that's the slope for the total line. I don't want the total line. I want to be able to get the slope of the running slope. So the running slope between each one of these points. So I'm going to show you how to do that so we can get a better idea of what we call a gradient, or the changing slope, or also sometimes called a derivative slope between those two. So let's get rid of this. We don't need it. Now let's create a slope. So I'm going to call this slope. So I'm going to type slope there, and then for this point, I'm just going to put 0. And then for slope, I'm going to put equals and slope. And then we get the slope formula. We need our known y's. That is going to be our conversions. That's what we want on our y-axis. So I'm just going to highlight these two, go back over, and I'm going to function for that. And then for our known y's, I'm going to put a comma, and that's going to be our for our known x's, that's going to be our sessions. I'm going to highlight that and go back over here and just press F4 to lock that in. And then I'm hit enter, and we'll get the same kind of error symbol there that tells us a warning. I'm going to click that all the way down, and you can see what we get is a changing slope between those 2 points. So now that we have that, we can start visualizing our data. So let's highlight date, and then we want our sessions, sum of sessions, and sum of conversions. And we're going to go over to insert here, and we're going to go to recommended charts. We're going to go, once they get the recommended charts, we're going to go to all charts, go to combo. Once you have combo, we want to have 2 line charts instead of the clustered columns. So we go and click the down caret, and we click the line. Then you can see these are not on, these are on the same axes, which don't show the interaction between the two. Click secondary axis, then click OK. Once we have that visual, we can kind of start seeing what the interaction is. So we can see, and let me make this format the legend. I want to put that on top. So I click format legend, right click, and put that on top so we can see it. So we can see in orange we have our conversions. So we don't have a lot of conversions at the beginning of that campaign. It seems to be growing. This might be our optimization period where we're trying to figure out what's the best strategy. And then our conversions here that are orange start dying off. Looks like around the end of July. So we can tell our kind of saturation point kind of hit around the end of July. And we should see pretty stable sum of sessions because we're paying for those sessions. So unless we alter the payment, we should see that always grow. So I would say around here is when we saw that kind of inflection point where we saw our conversions going down a little bit and we're not getting the best bang for our buck. Doesn't mean our campaign's not working, we're just not getting as many conversions. So that's one chart we can look at for that. So now let's visualize our slope, and we're looking for a period of inactivity, so I'm going to highlight the date and then go back over to our running slope. So we'll have this gradient. And I'm going to go over, and you can see we can choose, if we have recommended charts, we can choose the type of slope we want. All of these is going to tell us what was going on. I quite like this one because it's quite visual. You can use a line. This also tells us when things start to get a little bit flat. It's still kind of hard to see when things actually go flat because you can see there's like a slight increase. So something like this or even this gives us an indication of what's going on. So I'm going to choose maybe either this one or the stacked area, which I think is a little bit better. Well, I wanted to choose stacked area. Let me go back and insert. And then I have this one because I can actually see when things completely flatten out here, which kind of backs up the same period of time that we have around here. And remember, these are all indications of what's going on. We could definitely just do a visual inspection to say, hey, our campaign is no longer bringing in the sales based on running average also. But I think this is a little bit more visual. So I'm going to stick with those two graphs. So we have our slope and we have our interaction between these charts. To support my theory, if I go back over to pivot, and I know that 24% of my traffic is paid, and 24% of my conversions are from a paid channel, and that should affect the overall channels by thinking that maybe this starts off with a paid ad and then they end up converting. We should be able to see some of that relationship reflected um, now that we know we have a negative or flattening slope as time goes by. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to create a slope in my main full web data there. So I'm going to click slope and I am going to just start that here on the second line. Sorry. And I am going to get our Y's, which are our conversions here. And then I'm going to get our sessions, which are there. And I do want to be able to lock that first one down. So F4. And I want to be, well, not, I want to lock just the first one because I want the other one to run down. So I want just E2 and I2, and I hit enter, and I'm going to keep this 0. Going to name this slope, and then I'm going to populate this down, and we can see our slope starting. So now I'm going to visualize this across all our data, and I'm going to get slope and insert. So I'm going to go to recommended charts. I'm going to go to all charts, and you can see we can get this clustered column here, which I like. And this gives us kind of a more interesting view. And we can see it kind of aligns very well with our theory that at the end of July, which also when our paid search start going down, our slope for our overall conversions and traffic start going down also. So I think this is a little bit more convincing. So I'm going to stick with that in my data story. Now let's go over to get our probability. So first we want to do is we need to be able to get the probability of our conversions. If we look at the request, it says, what is the chance we have more than 8 conversions a day? So let's do that task. I'm going to start by duplicating this data here at full web. So clicking that tab, go to move and copy, full web, create a copy. And what I want to do is now that I have this full web, I don't need this. And I want to do this for our probability. So I'm going to rename that probability. They didn't ask for were we going to have more than 8 conversions per day per paid channel. So I'm going to look at the total traffic. So I don't need many of these columns. So I'm going to highlight everything that I don't need. And I believe all I need is the date and conversions. So I'm going to cut this. Oops, sorry. Gonna delete, not cut. So we delete all that. And then the first thing I want to do is get a histogram. So I'm just gonna highlight all of these conversions. I'm gonna go over and I'm going to get a insert and I'm gonna get a histogram. So this tells us where our data lies if we bin it. So we can see the majority of our data is in the 0 to 1 range, or in probably under 4. And then we can also see from this kind of line here that shows us the density also of our data. If I look at this point here, which is under 4, that's about 70% of our data. So that's one way to visualize our data. Now I'm going to show you another way. So this is more of the distribution of our data that the 70% is below. that 4 mark. So let's rename this distribution and let's do a different type of probability. Now you can change these bins if you want. Like for example, you can right click, go to Format Axis, and you can go to bins, and then you can go to the bin width or the number of bins. So it's up to you if you want to keep that. I think this is fine. You could definitely make them bigger. For example, you want to make the bin width, 0 to 2, and we can see that it's a little bit more um, kind of saturated or condensed in a way. So I'm going to leave it like that. Now I'm going to make a copy of this sheet of distribution, create a copy, click OK. Now I'm going to get rid of this. I don't need that. And then I'm going to call this probability. Probability. Let's sort our values. So I'm just going to get rid of the date column. And then I am going to copy, and I'm just going to make sure I paste that as values. So just in case there's some issues with formulas, I don't think there is. I'm going to go over to sort conversions by smallest to largest. Then I'm going to check, and we are all sorted there. And if I go back over to our data, I'm going to create an index. And the index is just going to start with 0. And then I'm going to go to 1. And then 2. And then I'm just going to copy that down. And then it should be, let's see, we have 1119 values. So we're going to take that index and we're going to divide by 119. And now we have our frequency, and I am just going to click that down, and now you can see the frequency, and we can turn that into a percentage, which is going to give us the probability. But let's get a few more decimal places here. So I want the reverse also, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to do equals 1 minus this column, and that's going to give us 100%. So it's just going in reverse, you see. And now what I want to do is I want to create a column of plot of data with these two columns. I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go over the scatter chart. And then you can see what's happening here is we get a plot there. But let's link these up. And the way we do that, we can go back over to change the chart type. And then you can see there's different types of scatter plots. I'm just going to use this line here. And what this is essentially telling us is here's where all our data is. But what we want to use is the percentages. So I'm going to highlight the reverse percentage. And then I'm going to get all of our conversions. I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go over to chart and scatter plot. And let's do back the line, this one. So now we have this percentage. So we can see what the percentage of our data is. So let me clean this up a bit. And this is called an empirical distribution plot. I just want this to go to 100, so I'm going to format the axis. Let's format here, format axis. And I'm going to keep that at 1. And minimum should be 0. So now what we can see, let me get rid of these lines, is that all of our data should be, and I also don't want this to go to -2, so I'm going to format this axis, highlight format axis, and then go to 0. So at 100%, we can see our values, and then as we go out, we can match this value to the percentage line. So they want to know at this stage right here at 8%, what is, at 8 or more, what is the probability? So it would only be for 8 and more, we would go 8 here and over, and it looks about 14%. So there's a 14% chance that we are going to have over 8 conversions. Now you may want to do it the opposite way, and let me get rid of this one. You might want to use the frequency here and then conversions. Go over to your scatter plot and then choose this one, and you could see the other way. So you can say here's your 8, and you could say 8 goes over to about 82%. So you can say, okay, there's like a 16% chance or less that you're going to see 8 conversions or more. So it's the way you want to see these two, and we are going to now visualize everything because we've answered all the questions that we need. Here we are back in our presentation, and remember that our request was, at what point did our marketing campaign reach saturation? We wanted to know where we over leveraged on a particular channel. What recommendations can you provide for the campaign team? And what is the chance that we have more than 8 conversions a day? And our deliverable is to provide an insight report to the marketing team on our findings. So let's do that. So we should diversify our acquisition channels. Why? Because we know that 92% of the sessions or the traffic being delivered to the site is through organic search. And that only represents 27% of all conversions. Our theory is that we are being introduced, or our users are being introduced to our website through one channel and converting on another. So that's why we see this discrepancy in organic search and traffic and organic search and conversions. And we can see that we have paid traffic, so we were able to deliver paid traffic to the site and still deliver 24% of all conversions. So it would be very important for us to get a better understanding of the omni-channel journey that a user takes from introduction to conversion and see what the channel interaction is with that. And we can leverage Google Analytics or our analytics package and use some attribution models to understand what point are users interacting with organic search. We also should be looking at the keywords that are delivering traffic to our site to understand what the keyword intent is. If these are general terms or transactional terms or informational terms, because we need to keep an eye on this because we are over leveraged in organic search because an algorithm change on Google could kill our business. Next, we wanted to understand where was the saturation point. So we understood we created a campaign performance running sum over time, and we looked at the relationship between conversion and our traffic. And we can see for the first 3 months or so, there was a learning period where we were optimizing and trying to get a better understanding of our audience more than likely. So that is a discussion I really want to have with our campaign team to understand what optimizations were made. So we know that at some point we continued to pay for our paid traffic, but our conversions started to go down. And we can see that happen around the end of July when our campaign kind of reached saturation, where we didn't see any big benefit in the growth of our conversions. Now, we do have a theory that our as we discussed in the previous slide, that it might be some omni-channel interaction. So we also wanted to see if this affected overall traffic. So we can see that there is a negative slope. So we were able to model the relationship between all traffic and our conversions. And we can also see a similar pattern where there's a growth period for the first 3 months. And then we see this decline around the end of July where our slope starts going down and we see less conversions, or the interaction between conversion and traffic go down. So this kind of helps to indicate that we probably saw a saturation point in the end of July. Now, what we wanted to do is get a better understanding of our possibility of getting more than 8 conversions a day. And this is unlikely. Our average conversion is 3.8 daily, and our max conversions are 16. So if we look at the distribution of our conversions, we can see from our histogram that the majority are under 4. So, and that's why we have that average there. However, if we looked at the probability of getting 8, we can look at the right-hand graph and see that if we look at the shaded area, and we can see that this is 8 conversions or more, we can see that the probability, if we move the line over, is around 14%. So what recommendations do we have? Now, we know we have an omni-channel journey, so we need to evaluate that customer journey and use some attribution models to get a better idea of how users are being introduced to the site and converting. We do understand that we may be over-leveraging organic with that high 93% conversion rate, and we could lose a lot of traffic if there's a Google algorithm update. So we need to evaluate using Google Search Console to find out what the intent of our keywords are. Are they transactional, informational, or something else? And we do need to find ways to diversify that traffic to avoid getting hit with an algorithm update. So the optimizations that we saw that allowed us to get to a good point past at that 3-month period, we need to discuss what those optimizations were. So during our next marketing push, we can maybe use those similar optimizations to have a longer peak period during our marketing campaign. So I hope that helps you get a better understanding of our marketing campaigns. Please leave any questions, comments, or any different ways you would actually go about solving this. I would love to hear your ideas. Thank you.